Hey world, Dan Brown here. We are 258 days out from the 2016 U.S. presidential election, and since my last upload, Republicans in South Carolina and Democrats in Nevada have had their say, and there weren't really any surprises. We'll talk more about Hillary and Bernie next week, but for today I want to focus on the Republican race, right? The clown car has emptied. We're left with basically three people in the running, with Donald Trump in the driver's seat, we got Ted Cruz riding shotgun, and Marco Rubio is in the back seat asking former Bush donors, are we there yet? And realistically, only Donald Trump and Marco Rubio stand any chance of winning the nomination, right? South Carolina was tailor-made for Ted Cruz's hardline conservatism and evangelical appeal, and that he couldn't even keep it very competitive with Donald Trump smells a little bit like the beginning of the end. Here's the rub, though. You've got to figure that Trump has to figure that if the dominant narrative of the Republican nominating process changes from Donald Trump versus anyone other than Trump to Donald Trump versus one very specific singular candidate, namely Marco Rubio, that the tide might finally turn. Marco Rubio might finally overtake him in a less crowded field. I think that Donald Trump needs Ted Cruz to stay in this race, at least for a little while. I mean, look, I know this sounds insane. The level of vitriol between the Trump and Cruz campaigns has been steadily increasing in recent weeks, but what if that's by design? Hang with me for a second. Take a look at this exchange from the recent Republican debate on CBS.
I like Donald. He is an amazing entertainer. But his policies for most of his life...
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
For most of his life, his policies have been very, very liberal. Right now, today, as a candidate, he supports federal taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood. I disagree with him on that. That's a matter of principle, and I'll tell you...
You are the single biggest liar. You probably are worse than Jeb Bush. Nasty guy. Now I know why he doesn't have one endorsement from any of his colleagues.
All right, John, I get to respond.
Pick from the buffet there.
He's a nasty guy.
Donald has this weird pattern. When you point to his own record, he screams, liar, liar, liar. If you want to go...
Where did I support it? Where did I support it?
If you want to go...
Hey, Ted.
You supported it when we were battling over defunding Planned Parenthood. You went on television and said Planned Parenthood does wonderful things and we should not defund them.
It does do wonderful things, but not as it relates to abortion.
So tell me, what are the wonderful things? What are the wonderful things it does?
There are wonderful things having to do with women's health.
You see, you and I disagree on that.
Not when it comes to abortion.
Wow, it seems like they really despise each other. But what if, rather than some organic, visceral back and forth between arch nemeses, what we just witnessed was instead a brilliantly choreographed dance between collaborators who stand to benefit from each other's rise? To be abundantly clear, what I'm about to suggest is just speculation, right? Part of me wants this to be true, if I'm being perfectly honest, because it would be interesting, right? But until we have reason to believe otherwise, you should probably treat this as strictly speculation, right? A thought experiment to help us imagine this nominating process more complexly. Please don't sue me for slander. Let's dig in.
I like Donald. He is an amazing entertainer. But his policies for most of his life...
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Right out of the gate, we get this ringing endorsement. And just as Cruz is about to throw in the but, Trump jumps in on cue saying, thank you very much, I appreciate it, to punctuate the soundbite, to make sure this seed takes root in the minds of his supporters, right? Me like Cruz.
Right now, today, as a candidate, he supports federal taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood. I disagree with him on that.
Calling someone a liberal in the vacuum of the Republican nominating process, those are fighting words, right? But taking a longer view, might this just be an underhand toss from Ted Cruz, setting up Donald Trump to make this sly appeal to moderate Republicans and independent voters whose support he will need if he wants to win in a general election? Before he can, knock that one out of the park, he has to reassure his power base that whatever crypto-fascist wants they've been projecting onto his candidacy still totally apply, and he does so in typical fashion by insulting Jeb Bush. May he rest in peace.
Matter of principle, and I'll tell you...
You are the single biggest liar. You probably are worse than Jeb Bush. Nasty guy. Now I know why he doesn't have one endorsement from any of his colleagues.
All right, John, I get to respond.
Pick from the buffet there.
He's a nasty guy.
Notice how Cruz and Trump are taking advantage of the debate rules. They keep invoking each other, which automatically passes the limelight back and forth, conveniently boxing out every other candidate. And bringing up Ted Cruz's lack of support among Senate colleagues, it serves multiple purposes. One, it guarantees that Cruz is going to be given a chance to respond, continuing their game of debate ping pong. And two, among Trump supporters who are basically protesting the Republican establishment, learning that, Ted Cruz has very little support among the Republican establishment, that's a good thing, right? Isn't Donald Trump just introducing Ted Cruz to his supporters as, someone of like mind?
You went on
That's
television
a lot
and
of
said
nuts.
Planned Parenthood does wonderful things and we should not defund
Oh,
them.
it does do wonderful things,
and-
but not as it relates to abortion.
So tell
They
me, what
do
are the
some-
wonderful
excuse
things?
me,
What are the wonderful
excuse
things it
me.
does?
There are wonderful things having to do with women's health.
You see,
but
you and I
not when it
disagree on
comes
that.
to abortion.
That's and
not
John,
when it comes
the
to
reason
abortion.
principle-
And there's the home run. Cruz enables Trump to grandstand against abortion for a minute, simultaneously offering the most full-throated defense of Planned Parenthood we've seen on a Republican debate stage this cycle. Like, what? He's playing to the general election crowd. Like, he must think that he has this thing locked up. So what exactly does he know that we don't? Could it be that he knows that Ted Cruz is working to subvert this nomination process in his favor in exchange for a spot in his administration? Or on the ticket? And okay, we might be zoomed in a little too far, focusing just on this one debate. This is bigger than one debate. Trump benefits from chaos generally, right? If the field narrows to just two candidates, order might be able to creep its way back into this process. And once the GOP establishment circles their wagons, Trump supporters might find themselves outnumbered for the first time in a long time. No criticism sticks to Trump in the eyes of his power base, and Donald Trump knows it.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay?
So what harm is there in keeping a feud alive that keeps an opponent's campaign alive long enough to gain as big a delegate advantage as possible in this more favorable three-candidate environment? And what does Ted Cruz have to lose? He doesn't have a clear path to the nomination at this point, and he certainly owes no debt of fealty to his establishment colleagues in the Senate. I mean, why not strike a deal with their devil? Or doesn't this face strike you as one that might go to extraordinary measures for a chance at power?
Well, my aspiration is to take over the world domination, rule everything.
I would prefer Bernie in the White House. I have nothing against Hillary. I don't think she would do a bad job by any means. What do you think the ramifications would be if they came out together and said something along the lines of, look, we don't agree on everything, but we share the same ideals, we both have great ideas, and we both want what's best for the country. So in the spirit of that, whichever one of us gets the nomination, we will just tap the other for the VP. I was just wondering what you thought about this, if you thought it would be a great idea, if you thought it was even a remote possibility, or if it's just not even worth talking about because it would never happen.